And don't forget, the latest Confessions podcast is there for you. All the best podcasts from last week and a few of the ones that weren't quite clean enough to make it onto the air. Which puts us in mind of the drinks trolley, and hopefully we've got something rather fine selected from Susie's drinks trolley of choice. What have we gone for today?
I've gone for a German Pilsner called Jever Fun. It's their less than 0.5% non-alcoholic version. And it is a really, really tasty German lager, which is alcohol-free.
Jever, it's called Jever Fun, is it?
Yeah, so Jever is the beer, and this is called Fun. So the normal classic is just called Jever, but also a very tasty alcoholic beer. But yes, Jever Fun.
So if you're having a dry January, then that's the one for you, Matt. You just,
Isn't it, though?
Have half a pint before you go home.
Yeah.
So today's confession, I think, has a 12 certificate.
Oh.
And it comes from Joe, J-O. Father Simon and the Confessional Collective. When I was 25 and working in a remote village, my senior colleague, let's call him Bill, suddenly became unwell and had to be taken to hospital. Just to reassure you at this point, he made a full recovery and his ailment is nothing to do with my confession.
Right,
Okay.
My other colleague, let's call her Sue, went with Bill to the hospital and I stayed behind to work. A couple of days later, he contacted me asking me to go into his house and to collect his, what he called personal effects, and some clothing maybe to give to a courier. I had never heard of this term, personal effects, before. The naive 25-year-old that I was, instead of asking for clarification or even Googling the term, which obviously didn't exist, or just ask somebody, I went happily into his house looking for his personal effects. Honing in on the personal element of the phrase, I looked in his drawers and cupboards, wondering what personal items he would like to be removed from his house and sent to hospital. What could he possibly be wanting from me? It was in a particularly well-hidden spot that I came across an envelope of photographs.
Oh, no.
The photographs were of several people, including himself.
Oh, what?
All of whom had appeared to have forgotten their clothes.
Oh, had they?
And they appeared to be playing a game of some sort.
Oh,
it wasn't Cluedo. It was more like Twister or something like that.
Okay.
Maybe it was very hot and there was a lack of clothing, and they were just keeping cool. Even so, Father Sam, I confess I had never seen anything like it.
No.
Aha, I thought, this must be the personal items
You kidding me?
that he wants removed from his house, perhaps in case his family were to stumble upon them, that kind of thing. I packed a large variety of clothing along with his personal photographs. I was shocked, Father Simon. This was Lincolnshire. We don't do that kind of thing.
No, we don't. No.
The next day, a courier came to collect the bag, and I called Sue to let her know. I reassured her that I'd found something very personal, but it was on its way, as requested. If it was personal effects he wanted, I'd certainly found them.
Yeah.
Sue asked what I meant, and I explained about the game of Twister. Joe, she said, he meant his toothbrush and nail clippers. That's personal effects. It was then that the panic and dread hit me. I had made a terrible mistake. Sue, I pleaded, you have to remove the photographs from his bag before he gets it. So this second bit of the story was told to me by Sue. When the courier arrived at the hospital, a member of staff brought the bag to the room. "Ah, the bag!" exclaimed Sue quickly, waving her arms around and dancing to cause a distraction. Bill asked for the bag, and Sue did her best to delay, asking if he was thirsty and pouring him a drink, checking if he was comfortable and rearranging his pillow, anything to get him to look in the other direction so she could unzip the bag. "Oh, look over there, there's something going on." "What?" says Bill. "Have you seen this YouTube video of cats singing?" "What?" says Bill. "Would you like a polo mint?" "Yes, okay," says Bill. Anyway, miraculously, she did manage to unzip the bag and remove the photographs before it was handed over to Bill, who was getting increasingly irritated by this woman and was more annoyed when he saw the vast quantities of clothing that I'd sent him and lack of personal effects, the actual personal effects. But he would have been even more annoyed had his Twister photographs come to light. That's what I think. Back they went, second drawer down just under the socks, in case he's still looking for them. So please forgive me for undertaking a task before understanding exactly what was being asked of me, and in doing so, accidentally uncovering a large pack of racy photographs and sending them to the hospital. Matron would not have been impressed. No, well, that's certainly true. I don't think they do matrons anymore, do they? Anyway, that's today's story. I mean, and it's a shocker of a story from Bill. That's a very nice fade, I think.
I thought so.
Very good. No one noticed the blend of music. Sister Susie, what do you say to Joe?
Oh, I've got lots of things to say to everybody here, really. I think Joe was trying their best. I feel like Bill could have been clearer, couldn't he? He could have just written a list. Just, write a list. I want my toothbrush, some pyjamas, some pants.
What is personal effect? But personal effects does mean what's in your toilet bag, doesn't it? That's what it is. Toothpaste, toothbrush, flannel, isn't it?
Yeah, but you can't get it wrong if you give a specific list, can you? You can't get it wrong if you give a list. So I feel like
it's his fault.
Well, yeah, maybe should have written a list. But also, Joe also went a bit too far rummaging, if you ask me.
Yes.
There was a bit too much finding and looking in all of the drawers. But it did make me laugh, and I think that's one of the best ones we've had for a while. So I'm going to forgive Joe, because the embarrassment there must have been high enough.
You're never quite sure what you're going to find rummaging in someone else's drawers. But in this case, who'd have thought it? Game of Twister.
Who'd have thought?
What Lincolnshire does in the summer?
Yeah, that's entirely up to them. I'm going to forgive, because that was the funniest one we've done in a while. Also, yes, I agree. Bill should have been clearer. I don't understand what personal effects means either, but, I mean, obviously it doesn't mean that. But, I mean, does it mean toothbrush? Just say toothbrush then. Send me a toothbrush and who needs nail clippers? Oh, how fast are your nails growing? Not that fast. Toothbrush, I understand, though. And maybe a washcloth, something like that. Yes, definitely not those pictures. Goodness me.
That's not what he meant.
Good. Please make sure you send those pictures of me playing Twister with the rest of Lincolnshire.
My very hot friends. Is that pampas grass outside?
Oh, dear.
Anyway, the people's verdict, please. Does Joe get forgiven? 61054, thank you. But before we go any further, we had a confession just before the news at 6 o'clock from Joe. A strange story about how her work colleague Bill had to go into hospital and asked her to go to his house and get her his personal effects. She didn't know what personal effects were, so when she found an envelope full of racy photographs, assumed that he meant that. And then needed t'other friends, Sue, to try and head them off at the pass. Anyway, so that's where we were. It was a 12 certificate, and the people's verdict is in. Here we go.
Not forgiven, says Patricia in Epsom. Even if you don't know what personal effects are, why on earth would you assume that if someone's in hospital, they'd want naked pictures? Poor bloke. Georgie in Chester, forgiven. I've got no idea what personal effects are either. Those pictures are certainly personal. And Sasha says, forgiven. I'm more confused why they were so desperate to hide the pictures. I'm sure Bill in hospital would have found the mistake hilarious.
I suppose, and Susie was saying, if he thought he wasn't going to make it out of hospital, then maybe he wanted the photographs because...
What, the last thing he sees before...
No,
what?
because he didn't want anyone else to find them. I don't know what was going on there. Anyway, if you have a confession for us, please send it to confessions@greatesthitsradio.co.uk. Anyway, there goes the trolley. I just thought it'd be worth saying John Bishop on the show tomorrow. Susie, the trolley's just gone past. What did you grab from it as it went?
It has. I've grabbed this one. I feel like Matt will like it. It's called Computer World. It's from Left Handed Giant. It's a hazy pale ale, 5.5%, and it's got Citra, Idaho 7, and Nectaron hops in it.
Oh,
Tasty.
yes.
You love the Nectaron hops,
can't get
don't
enough.
you?
Yes.
And also a little Kraftwerk reference, so that's a very nice thing.
Bad.
So today's confession comes from T-Bandit. That's how it's signed. T-Bandit sends this tale in. Father Simon and the Purveyors of Pardon. I'm seeking forgiveness for a series of sinful acts that first took place just a few years ago. Our family live in a leafy Buckinghamshire town, more specifically on a pleasant road of semi-detached houses, the sort where street parties for jubilees and community clapping for the NHS takes place. Neighbourly friendship and consideration were strong. In the autumn of 2021, our immediate neighbours moved house and a new, younger couple moved in. The customary bottle of wine was taken round, pleasantries exchanged, and they mentioned they'd be having a moving-in party the following weekend, apologising in advance for any inconvenience. It was therefore no surprise to find a myriad of parked cars the following Saturday, With a barbecue and music playing to what must have been close to 30 people enjoying the afternoon sunshine. Despite their close proximity and possibly due to the effects of drinking, some guests felt the need to communicate exclusively through shouting. The loudest was a lady who clearly took great pride in her appearance and sported an elaborate haircut that must have taken hours to arrange. Paired with her shrill shrieks and frequent cackling, she bore a striking resemblance to Mrs. Faulty, so we shall call her Sybil for the purposes of this tale. By 10 p.m. the music had died down, but the volume of conversation remained at a level Nigel Tufnell of Spinal Tap would have considered ambitious. While some guests had left and others gone inside, Sybil was clearly a smoker and would audibly reappear every 15 minutes for a cigarette. Her language was colourful, not suitable for your tea time listeners. Our children were primary school aged, and the long bedtime routine was punctuated by little faces reappearing to complain that they couldn't sleep because of the noise. When my wife and I finally went to bed just after midnight, the party had largely fizzled out, but the metronomic reappearance of Sybil continued until 3 a.m.
Wow.
When we eventually dozed off. This is very, very annoying behaviour.
Yes.
The next morning I awoke tired but prepared in the spirit of neighbourliness to let things go. However, coming downstairs, I sensed my wife's ire. As a keen gardener, she was outraged to find her prized flowers by the fence covered in ash.
Oh, no.
With around 20 lipstick-stained cigarette butts nestled along the foliage, it was clear Sybil had been using our garden as an ashtray.
Oh.
As a seasoned husband, I read the warning signs and decided a trip to the local garden centre might diffuse the situation. The plan worked. With the purchase of a new garden irrigation system and an alarming quantity of exotic bulbs, the crisis was averted. Father Simon, there'd be nothing to confess if the story ended here. However it transpired, Sybil was the sister of one of our neighbours, and her visits were far more regular than anticipated. When we learnt she was going to be house-sitting while they were away, the plan for which I seek forgiveness was hatched. As with all things these days, the aforementioned irrigation system was rather sophisticated and could be controlled from an app, allowing the tap to be turned on and off at will. It also came with spare hoses and nozzles. After installation, I had about 5 metres of hose left over. It was a simple job to route this up the drain pipe and out of the gutter between our houses. I can attest that with the correct angling, the wide spray nozzle delivers a fine mist at ground level, the sort of precipitation wholly incompatible with a fine haircut. When Sybil took up residence the following week, I wasn't surprised to see extra cars appear. One evening, as darkness fell, I heard the creak of the patio door next door. Like an overly excited teenager, I immediately hit the on button on my new system. Moments later, there was a shriek, and Sybil retreated indoors, no doubt staring into the darkness, confused by the sudden change in weather. Father Simon, I've never felt so powerful. Whenever Sybil became too noisy, we sent her straight back inside with a simple tap of the screen. It reached the stage where my family could bet on how many seconds it would take between activation and hearing the patio door slam. The fastest retreat was just 6 seconds. Obviously, I do not seek forgiveness from Sybil. After all, we helped her cut down on a dirty habit, dirty habit, while saving the wider neighbourhood's blushes. However, I do seek forgiveness from the neighbours 2 doors along who had no such relief and endured her soirees through their party wall instead. You'll be pleased to know the relationship with our neighbours has flourished since, though the risk of precipitation when Sybil visits remains oddly higher than the Met Office forecast. I realise now that absolute power, especially when Wi-Fi enabled, does tend to corrupt. Absolutely. Well, there's definitely a life lesson there, a philosophical lesson, I think, from T-Bandit. Imagine that you have on your phone, you have the app to spray this woman with finely honed water. I think that's a very, very good idea. Nothing to forgive, really. Oh, yes, Sister Susie, sorry. It's nothing to do with me. It's your call. What do you think?
Well, I do hear what you're saying, and Sybil does sound very annoying, and particularly throwing her, ashtray into your garden doesn't sound very nice. And I understand why you may do it once to teach her a lesson. However, doing it all of those times, is it really, really, really necessary?
Yes, I think
she
so.
may have learned her lesson after the first 1 or 2. And I just think, you go past the getting your own back into a bit mean category for me. So I'm not going to forgive, no.
Put the fag out, or I spray you with a fantastic hose.
Correct.
That's the deal.
Yes, and I think the nation stands with me when I say forgiven tonight, because Sybil absolutely had it coming, inconsiderate and thick, because she still can't work it out. She still doesn't know that it's only ever raining in that spot. How has she not spotted that the rain is coming from a hose pipe above her head? Inconsiderate and thick, Sybil. So for all of those reasons, I'm going to forgive.
All right. Okay, so as tradition dictates, a split house here. What do you say to T-Bandit? Does he get your forgiveness? 61054 on the text. First word is Simon. Just before the news, we had a confession from T-Bandit, who had an annoying neighbour called Sybil, who used a lot of cigarette ash, to ruin their garden, and she made a lot of noise, so he got a new irrigation system to spray her with water whenever he needed it via the app. The people's verdict is in.
Forgiven, says Sarah in Chester. I love this level of pettiness. Who talks loudly at 3 o'clock in the morning and puts their cigarette butts in the next door garden?
Yes.
Incredibly rude. Bev in Bournemouth, though, says, not forgiven. Why don't you just talk to the neighbour and ask them to control Sybil's behaviour? Putting in a full-blown irrigation system seems a little extreme. But Adam in Lichfield says 100% forgiven. Sybil sounds very annoying, throwing her spent cigarettes into the pot. I bet she thinks her weather app is a little bit faulty. T-Bandit is very clever. I think he got his revenge down to a T.
I think you did. Thank you very much indeed for the verdicts, and thank you for the confessions. You can send yours to confessions@greatesthitsradio.co.uk. Oh, it's confessions time, but first of all, we need something from the trolley, just to wet the whistle. What are you offering us, Suze?
Well, I've gone for a very classic fresh apple cider from Redfin, 4.2%. Very delicious. Quaffable.
So that wasn't quite long enough for me to...
Oh, sorry.
Quaff yourself.
They also do some fruity ones as well. They've got a melon cherry as well too.
Okay, no, I'm not interested in that one, but I'll stick with the apple one. Thank you very much. Today's confession comes from Disconnected Dean. That's how he signs it.
Right.
Disconnected Dean. A most holy Simon of Mayo and the ever-judicious collective, I come before you today burdened by a sin that took 14 hours to gestate and approximately 5 seconds to ruin my standing with the Spanish Civil Guard.
Oh.
Oh dear.
Which is an interesting setup. The year is 2001. I was the insufferably proud owner of a Nokia 3310, a Duplo brick of pure Scandinavian communication power that could survive a nuclear blast and still play Snake. My father, however, was a technological conscientious objector, having retired to, is it Murcia in Spain? Murcia in Spain, with his wife, my stepmother. He lived a peaceful life of San Miguel, other beers, but mainly San Miguel, and sunshine, until I, in my late 20s arrogance, convinced him that he needed a mobile phone for emergencies. I flew out to see my old man for a couple of nights. The following evening, my stepmother permitted the lads to frequent the local bars to put the world to rights. He then showed me his new Alcatel mobile phone. It had the processing power of a toaster and a significant ringtone problem. Despite keeping his new mobile in his breast pocket, he swore that if it ever buzzed, the shock alone would induce a cardiac event. He lived in mortal terror of the aggressive vibration setting. Whilst at the porcelain altar, I believe it's called, a brilliant idea struck me. I decided to test the cross-border SMS messaging speed, and I went about preparing a simple one-word message to my dad, who merely sat 20 meters away in the bar. With no predictive text to assist typing a word, it was easiest to type in capital letters, and for a creative character flair, I added an exclamation mark to complete my message. I typed, rather unwisely, "heart attack!" exclamation mark, then hit send. Done. Well, a verified chuckle. I felt confident I could add a bit of humour to our evening. I then joined my father for another large beer and then waited for him to respond to an incoming text message on his mobile, which remained tucked in his shirt pocket. Now, in 2001, communication technology was fickle. My message didn't travel meters. It went from Murcia to a satellite, back to a server in the UK, got stuck behind a digital queue of Big Brother voting results, and vanished into the ether. Where the message went, I do not know. We drank more, we wobbled home, I forgot. Subsequently, I completely forgot. And I even forgot that the message existed. The next morning, nursing a head that felt like it was being played by a percussion ensemble, my father and stepmother dropped me off at Murcia Airport for my return flight to Gatwick. Passing through security and passport control, I waited for my flight. I had 2 hours to kill. I found a quiet area, trying to get comfortable, slumped into a seat, fired up a DVD on my laptop, and donned a large pair of headphones. 10 minutes into the film, I was engrossed and I was motionless. Suddenly, out of the blue, several pairs of black leather military boots appeared around my laptop screen. I took off my headphones to the sound of Spanish shouting. I looked up to see a phalanx of the Guardia Civil, hands on holsters. Standing among the thick-soled black boots, I spotted a pair of little white espadrilles that my father also wore. Looking up, it was him. He looked like he'd been dug up from his very own grave. In a panicked voice, he said, "Are you all right, son?" He was visibly stressed and naturally looking very worried. I instantly replied, "Of course I am. Are you? Why are you here?" And it turned out that while my dad was driving home after dropping me off at the airport, the digital gods of international telecommunications finally delivered the briefest text message. As a result, my father's Fisher-Price-style mobile phone had screamed for its life in his breast pocket. The vibration had startled him, and he looked at the screen. Convinced I was currently expiring on the departures floor, my retired expat parent pulled a handbrake turn that would have impressed any getaway driver after robbing El Banco Local. Is that right?
Yeah, that'll work, yeah.
He abandoned his car in the middle of a terminal drop-off lane, sprinted to security and screamed that his son was having a heart attack. The airport security formed a rapid response search party with the airport's police, medical professionals and airline staff to find a slumped and motionless 27-year-old. They assumed I was in the throes of a medical catastrophe. I wasn't. I was just watching the Royal Tenenbaums.
Oh.
My father said he received a text message from me, and it was at that point that I remembered, oh, that text.
Oh, yes.
My father's mortified face is still something I see when I close my eyes every night. I was very close to being escorted to my gate by the very annoyed hombres with handguns who didn't appreciate my desperate explanation in pidgin Spanglish what network latency actually meant. I don't know what it means.
Let's say that's something to do with the text message taking too long.
That's
taking
right.
so long.
I seek forgiveness from the collective for wasting the resources of the Spanish Interior Ministry, for nearly giving my father the very condition I joked about, and for being the kind of person who thought an Alcatel phone was a comedy prop. It's a very, very much a period piece from 2001. He's got a Nokia 3310 and slightly arrogant, as he says, is disconnected. Dean, Sister Susie, what do you say?
Well, I just think this is silly, Dean. I don't like. It's just not even funny, really. Even if your dad had received it like straight away, you were in a different room. He still would have thought you were having a heart attack. He still would have had the same panic. And for that reason, Dean, I'm sorry, I can't forgive you.
I mean, it does sound as though, I guess the father behaved the way any father would.
Yes.
Leaving the car in the drop-off lane, off we go. Come on, civil guard, let's get this sorted.
Yes.
What do you say, Matt?
Can I be alone in thinking that maybe it's the telephone networks to blame for this? If they're with their latency and everything else, if they'd actually delivered the text when he sent it, then it would have been just funny, wouldn't it? That we sat in the bar finding it very funny, but instead it took forever to get sorted out. So yes, I'm going to forgive, and nice to see the Guardia Civil getting a little mention there. Well done to them.
61054. So you are forgiving.
Going to forgive, yes. Yeah.
61054 on the text, please. First word is Simon. However, first of all, some reaction to tonight's confession from disconnected Dean, who on a night out with his dad in 2001 in Spain sent a joke text saying heart attack. I mean, he was in the same building. He was sitting opposite him, so he thought it would be fine. However, it arrived the next day, causing his dad to rouse the Guardia Civil to try and find him. Anyway, the people's verdict. Here we go.
Dave in Portsmouth says, not forgiven. Who sends a heart attack text when they're not actually having a heart attack? It's like the boy that cried wolf. Michael, though, says forgiven. He was just having a bit of fun, and 2001 technologies sound rubbish. I blame the phone networks and not Dean. And Gary in Leeds says, hilarious, totally forgiving. The strain in Spain comes waiting for the plane.
Oh, I see what he's doing there. Okay, thank you for the verdicts and thank you for your confessions. You can send them to confessions@greatesthitsradio.co.uk. But before we go any further, we're grabbing something from the trolley. What have you lined up for us today, Suze?
I've got a nice German Helles lager. It's called Infinity. It's from from Bristol Beer Factory. Super tasty, nice and hoppy. 4.6%.
Lovely.
I think that's to Matt's taste, really.
It is, isn't
Yeah.
it? Isn't
All
it?
right.
Just.
Nigel will have some other fine serving suggestions for his food very shortly after 6 o'clock. Today's confession comes from Wendy Miller. That's how it's signed. If you remember your children's television,
Yeah, I do,
you know
yeah.
where we are. Father Simon, I'm not going to use my real name, so Wendy Miller it is. My confession takes me back nearly 45 years to the 80s, when permed hair, blue eyeliner, Jackie magazine and ski pants were the uniform of my life, just like Matt's, actually.
Yeah. Ski pants.
However,
Ski pants.
not on this particular day, the day which has haunted me for decades. This day, Father Simon, I was definitely in school uniform, sat in the prestigious position in the top row of our high school theatre with my form. It was our weekly school assembly. Quite a boring affair, which did tend to drag on with the school orchestra and the school choir, various announcements, the odd hymn, and then the SWATs ceremony, as the world and his wife were invited up to receive their merits and awards for sport, academic achievements and showing off. You know the way it is.
Okay.
All presented by none other than the headmaster himself. He was actually a great guy. He was the head of the senior year, Brunhilde, that was to be feared. A lady of voluptuous proportions who seemed even more scary on assembly days as she cast her beady eyes around the theatre looking for her next chatting victim. On this particular day, Father Simon, I was a tad unwell with a cold, a streaming nose and a gruff-sounding voice. The assembly seemed to drag on more than usual. But finally, the last hymn finished, the theatre fell silent, and the headmaster took to the centre of the stage, clutching a raft of merit awards. Suddenly, out of nowhere, I felt my nose tickle. I grabbed my tissues and I tensed my body for an almighty sneeze, and then, out of nowhere, I'm afraid to say that I broke wind.
Oh!
Wow.
I
Yeah,
could
there you
keep
go.
the sneeze in, but I could not keep anything else in.
Oh, dear.
That's under control and the other end.
No.
Yeah, one or the other.
Immediately, all my classmates started laughing, with those nearest to me holding their sides and trying to compose themselves. I was mortified. I couldn't deny it. It was me, and I was so embarrassed. It was a good job it was the darker end of the hall, up at the top of the theatre, as my face said it all. I was blushing very badly. I'd only sneezed, Father Simon. How could this have happened? How could have I had such little control at such a young age? The whole school turned to look at our class, who by now all knew what I had done and were trying not to laugh too, without success. The headmaster, certificate aloft for the 1500-metre champion, cleared his throat, gazed up to our year and shouted, "Class 5DS, is there something amusing? Do tell. Please enlighten the rest of us." The theatre fell silent. The head tapped his foot. Brunhilde's head was up off her seat. Not that her head was on the seat, but,
No.
she jumped from her seat.
Yeah.
Jump up. Yeah.
And she was standing hands on hips. I just wanted the ground to swallow me up. Father Sam, we were all silent. My friend nudged me to own up, but how could I? What would I say in front of the whole school? The assembly finished, and we were all allowed to return to class. I felt dreadful, Father Sam. Not only had I stopped the assembly and actually parked in front of the boys, a terrible thing to do, big
Yeah.
red face,
Yeah.
but I couldn't blame anyone else, which you can obviously normally do when you're in a group of people. It's all anyone could talk about. Anyway, due to my awful cold and the fact I had a temperature, I was allowed to go home later that morning, and I never wanted to go back to school ever again. When I did return a couple of days later, this sorry episode continued. I found out that during the day that I went home, that at form registration after lunch, our form teacher dutifully announced the whole class was in detention for disrupting the assembly.
Wow.
The teacher was informed by multiple people that I had let out a mighty ripper, but he was having none of it.
Oh, no.
"Are you blaming the sick? Are you blaming the sick?" he bellowed. "Shame on you, 5DS. Shame on you." I think he said it like that.
Yeah.
Nice.
Ray Winston.
Ray
yeah.
Winston was
Lovely.
the
Was,
teacher. Yeah.
So unfortunately, Class 5DS were placed on detention that day, all because of me. On the day of my return, I was asked to stay behind by my form teacher. And once everyone had gone, he asked me what had happened. I did confess that, yes, I'd let Polly out of prison, but... Not an expression I'd heard before.
No.
But I didn't do it on purpose. It was indeed my cold and a side effect of the sneeze. He tried not to laugh, but the twitching of his mouth gave it away, and I hung my head in shame. He said I should have told him. I couldn't, Father Simon. It was all too embarrassing. I even had to see Brunhilde, the scary head of senior year, who was slightly less forgiving and was sure I'd done it on purpose, as if that were even possible. Is it possible? No, I don't think it is.
No.
I seek forgiveness, Father Sam, to my classmates who had to endure a huge detention whilst I was tucked up in home, and to the winner of the 1,500-metre track award, who had a longer than normal wait for the certificate due to my cold and my wind. Yours faithfully, Windy Miller. Well,
Yes.
I mean, I think...
No, great fade. Well done.
I loved it.
Yeah.
One of my favourites.
Yeah, sorry about that. That was just a little bit... I was so carried away by
Yes.
Windy's tale.
Yeah.
I mean, did Windy do... I mean, would you have owned up, Sister Susan? I'm not sure.
I can't think of anything more embarrassing to do in an assembly full of all your peers, and forever to be probably known as Windy Miller. So I feel for Windy Miller here, because you just don't want to be in their shoes, do you, or nearby. And I just think I'm going to forgive you. There's no harm done. You couldn't help it. You worked very well. Embarrassing enough. Forgiven.
Letting Polly out of prison? Is that a thing?
I've not heard of that one before, but that's a lovely painting pictures with
Yes,
words. isn't
lovely.
it?
Yes, maybe it's a regional thing, or maybe it was an 80s thing.
It could be an 80s thing, couldn't it? Polly,
Polly,
to go with the ski pants.
and Heidi High, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Brother Matthew.
So I'm going to forgive. Number one, I mean, obviously, he's not to blame at all. He's sneezing and something happened, and it happened.
Yeah.
And he's not to blame for the rest of the class laughing. That's up to the rest of the class, their reaction. And collective punishment for them all. I think we know my feelings on the collective punishment. I don't think that's fine at all. Why is the head of senior year getting involved in this? From someone breaking... Really? You're going to spend your time over someone breaking wind? Isn't that Ofsted on the phone? Surely deal with them first.
I don't think Ofsted had been invented.
I'm going to say that they had. And for that reason, I'm going to...
All right, very good. Send your confessions, please. Confessions@greatesthitsradio.co.uk.